So I guess it's my turn to talk about my stuff. Well, as your assistant mentioned, I'm very involved with primitive and tribal art, and that's where my influences come from. And it's still my favorite stuff on Earth. And so I have this feeling that there's these ancient forms that persist all through the time that anybody's made anything, and that's what I try to plug into with my stuff. And so, I try not to use too many modern tools or materials. I try to, I use old stuff to begin with, old wood and metal, and basically I try to preserve that kind of tribal, ancient aesthetic. And so I pick stuff that already old, already has a surface, already has shown its passage through time, basically. And I kind of start with that and then work around it. It's kind of hard for me to start with a blank canvas. I usually start with an object that I like and then build up pieces from that. And that's basically where I'm coming from. I mostly work with metal and wood, although it's getting increasingly difficult to find the kind of stuff that I like to work with, so I've been switching to more modern materials somewhat, although there's not much evidence of it in this show. But like, for example, I've been using a lot of ancient whalebone and fossils and stuff like that in my pieces. And so there's components of some of them that are 20 or 30,000 years old, as well as other components that are just, fairly recent.
You want to talk about one of the pieces?
This is a piece that I just finished making. I've actually got a reserve on it. Someone wants to trade me for a Benny Buffano sculpture, which is kind of an interesting thought, although I never was very fond of Buffano, But anyway, we're working on it, and so I just completed this one just a couple of days ago, actually. And one of the things I did was it originally had the base was actually a metal sewer top, but it was too heavy and awkward to handle. And so one of the things about sculpture is that, either you have any sort of what they call an integrated base or not. And these are professional bases that obviously are not part of the sculpture. And so I think that this particular piece works better that way. The other piece, because it was rusty and kind of looked like this as a surface, seemed to be part of the piece, and I didn't want it to be perceived that way. So that's kind of the way I work. This is an old piece of driftwood. These are all old pieces of metal that I've enhanced the surface of. This part here is actually from an old, I think a 37 or 38 Chevy or Ford that we found the carcass in the Sonoma coast, and I've been dismantling it for a couple of years, and I've made many pieces out of it. So this yellow and white is all original paint on that particular piece. A lot of this other stuff, a lot of these are made with from old hat molds from the turn of the century. So I try to recycle old and ancient stuff both, and just try to preserve that kind of aesthetic that has been around since we've been making stuff, which actually is a lot longer than most people realize.